Welcome, Chaos Lovers. Today, we're diving into Monarch of Death, chapters 1 of 4. Brace yourself, because things get crazier than your Saturday night regrets. Spoilers ahead. So don't come crying like your ex after you ghosted them. Let's get into it. Monarch of Death style, where the plot twists harder than my attempt to adult properly. That's it for chapters 1 to 4.
Chapter 1, Something Strange, with a sprinkle of sarcasm. The first thing Karnak noticed when he woke up was a guy staring at him. The man looked as plain as a soggy piece of toast, blonde and maybe in his 20s. Wait, do I know him? Looks like someone I'd ignore at a party, Karnak thought. But hey, mornings are rough on everyone, especially when you're reincarnated after a stint as a death knight. Excuse me, but are you the young master? The blonde dude's voice was like a half-hearted apology at a fast food counter. Suddenly, the fog cleared. Barros, is that you? Yep, it was his trusty sidekick from his youthful, not-so-glamorous days, before necromancy and all the fun of turning into a death knight. This is not what I expected, Barros mumbled, looking as confused as someone who just realized they've texted the wrong person. I figured there'd be some Hollywood fade-to-black moment, or maybe a dramatic voiceover. Something cool, at least. Karnak shrugged. Yeah, I thought there'd be some grand exit too. Guess we got budget cuts. But seriously, the whole whoosh, now I'm someone else thing doesn't really apply when you've been marinating in necromancy for a century. It's more like waking up from a nap that lasted a little too long. Get me a mirror, Karnak said. I gotta see if I still look like the brooding anti-hero. Barros raised an eyebrow. A mirror? Right. Let me just pull that out of my non-existent luxury bag. You think we live in a palace, boss? Touché. Karnak was no longer the grand monarch of death who could snap his fingers for room service. Now, he was just the illegitimate son of a rural noble, meaning a mirror was about as realistic as a winning lottery ticket. Barros squinted at him. Nah, no worries. You still look the same. Black hair, black eyes, and that I hate everything scowl. Very on brand. Really? I still look that bad? Barros nodded sagely. Yep, that's why I always told you to fix your face. You could be handsome if you didn't constantly look like you just smelled something weird. Karnak chuckled. Nice to know some things don't change. Barros had been cheeky for over 100 years, so why start now? Karnak glanced around the cave. It was the interior decorating equivalent of meh. A tiny table sat in the corner with an old book on it, lit only by a sad, flickering candle. Definitely not Instagram-worthy. He picked up the dusty book. Ah yes, the beginning of everything, he said dramatically, like a guy reminiscing over his first crappy car. It was a scribbled notebook he'd found in his family's attic, which might as well have been written by a sleep-deprived college student. But that notebook had gotten him started on necromancy, so it was kind of a big deal, even if it looked like it belonged in the discount bin. Let's see if I still got it, Karnak muttered and snapped his fingers. A spark jumped, lighting the book on fire with a satisfying whoosh. Yup. Necromancer powers, still here. Barely. Karnak nodded like a guy pretending his old car wasn't stalling on the freeway. Barros flinched. Was it okay to just burn that? Karnak waved him off. Relax, I memorized it. Besides, it's not like the book had anything groundbreaking in it. To be fair, it wasn't some ancient artifact dripping with dark magic. It was more like Necromancy 101, how to summon skeletons on a budget. Still, best not to leave that knowledge lying around for some idiot to stumble on. After Karnak dusted off the ashes, he turned toward the cave entrance, where a faint light beckoned. Time to head out. Sunshine and other annoyances. As they stepped outside, Karnak and Barros recoiled like vampires caught on an afternoon stroll. The sun poured down on them like nature's way of saying, "You're not welcome here." What is that? Barros stammered. Karnak squinted. I don't know, but I think it's trying to kill me. Oh wait, no, it's just sunlight. Barros deadpanned. Right, the sun. Karnak nodded, as if recalling some long-forgotten trauma. They'd been dead for so long, sunlight felt like hellfire. They were so used to creeping in shadows that the bright daylight was like nature slightly slapping them in the face with a glow stick. But then the weirdest thing happened. They got emotional. Barros, look, tears! Karnak exclaimed. I'm crying! Holy crap, me too, I think I've got a runny nose. I'm drooling, Karnak added, starting to get a little too enthusiastic. Think we can pee again? Barros asked, because priorities. Let's not get carried away, okay? We just got these bodies back. No need to test their limits. They stood there for a minute, basking in the sheer overwhelming reality of being alive again. It wasn't just the physical sensations. They had emotions, thoughts, and hormones. All the things that make living both wonderful and annoying. Who needs godlike power anyway? Karnak declared with the conviction of someone who would definitely miss godlike power after about 10 minutes. Right? Power doesn't equal happiness, just stress, mostly. They set off down a forest path, a couple of lowly travelers with shabby clothes and high hopes. Sweating and starving, the joys of being human. Half a day into their journey, the nostalgia wore off. Barros, it's hot. Karnak was sweating like a guy who just realized he wore a black suit to a summer wedding. I forgot how irritating it is to sweat, Barros grumbled. And I forgot how annoying hunger is, and thirst. Ugh, I miss being a death knight. Turns out, when you've spent centuries as an immortal, living bodies are high maintenance. No use complaining. Barros checked the map. We should be near Dara village soon. It's been a while, though. Darha village was their pit stop back when Karnak was just starting out in necromancy. It had inns, restaurants, and, most importantly, food. Karnak's stomach growled just thinking about it. So what should we do about money? Karnak wondered. Should we rob someone? Barros glared. You said we should live like decent people. Right, forgot. Force of habit. Barros sighed and checked his money pouch. It jingled, a pathetic sound of poverty. We've got copper coins, a lot of them, not exactly rolling in luxury. Karnak snorted. Great, so we can afford the peasant platter, stale bread and water with a side of disappointment. And here I was, hoping for a steak. I mean, we are nobles, in name only. What good is being a noble family if they're dirt poor? Barros huffed, jingling the pouch for emphasis. Karnak chuckled, feeling that wave of annoyance mixed with nostalgia wash over him. His family wasn't exactly rolling in cash, more like barely scraping by, and that was before you even added the illegitimate son status into the mix. Ah, good times. Now that I think about it, Karnak said, rubbing his chin, I might have to see my family again. Ugh, I'd rather stab myself in the foot. Barros made a face like he just bit into something sour. Yeah, seeing your brothers again? Not exactly a reunion to look forward to. His family had treated him like an extra sock, useless and only taking up space. Especially his two brothers. They treated him like dirt, mostly because they were living on scraps themselves. Ah, family. So, you gonna start a fight the moment you see them? Barros asked, only half joking. Karnak smirked. Nah, I'm older now. Wiser. I can be the bigger man? Barros raised an eyebrow. Dude, you're literally 20 again. You're not that mature. Mentally, I'm 100 years old, Karnak said with all the confidence of a guy trying to bluff his way into a bar with a fake ID. I can totally handle it this time. I'm not that impulsive kid anymore. You're still technically that impulsive kid right now, Karnak just shrugged. Whatever. I've got a century of experience to fall back on. I'm practically zen now. The memories of his family started creeping back in. His brothers, the fights, the mistreatment. Karnak thought he could handle it now. After all, he had destroyed empires and faced down the deadliest enemies in existence. How bad could a family reunion be? He had a flashback to when he, murdered his brothers. That was awkward. Thinking back, they weren't that bad, Karnak muttered, trying to convince himself more than Barros. Barros laughed. Yeah, sure. Compared to who? Serial killers? Okay, maybe they were pretty awful, Karnak grimaced. Now I'm getting pissed off again. See, told you, you haven't changed a bit. Karnak waved off the comment. Nah, I'm good. I'll play nice. Maybe even throw in some fake compliments to keep the peace. Barrows side-eyed him. Wasn't your entire problem back then that you couldn't play nice? Karnak grinned, that old spark of mischief returning. I'll do it this time. I've got a handle on my temper now. You are that 20-year-old kid, though, just with extra baggage. Karnak snorted. It's all good. I've learned from my mistakes, mostly. How about some dinner? The day dragged on, and their stomachs were making more noise than a tavern brawl. As they walked, the familiar sight of Dara village appeared in the distance, like a beacon of hope for their growling stomachs. Karnak sighed. So, about money. Should we, borrow some from a passing traveler? Barrows shot him a look. That's called robbery. We're trying to live like normal people, remember? Old habits die hard, okay? Karnak scratched the back of his head. But seriously, what's the plan? We're broke. Burroughs shrugged. We have a few coppers, enough for some bread and maybe a little booze. We should at least eat first, then figure it out. Karnak couldn't argue with that logic. Food first, scheming later. All right, let's hit the village. We'll think of something after dinner. Barros's eyes lit up. I can already taste the food. They walked toward the village, the thought of even a meager meal giving them just enough motivation to ignore their exhaustion. Darha village was close now, and with it, the promise of food. Sure, it wouldn't be a feast, but at least they'd have a full stomach. After all, even necromancers need to eat. Karnak grinned. Let's just hope we don't get arrested for loitering before we figure out our next move. Barrows snickered. Or get thrown out of the tavern for looking too poor. Yeah, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Karnak sighed. There it was. Darha village, just on the horizon. The first step on their journey to, well, who knows where. But whatever came next, they would face it as only two former undead could, slightly confused and a little sarcastic. Chapter 2. Something Strange. A quaint little inn stood at the entrance to Darha village, promising lodging and meals. The first floor was bustling with peddlers munching on their lunches. However, a pair of peculiar guests were drawing all the attention. Ah! Oh my goodness! This is so delicious! Gulp! Is this what flavor is? Yes, this is what boiling does! The two men, seated with just barley bread and vegetable stew, were treating their meal like a religious experience. Every bite was accompanied by exaggerated expressions of bliss. Naturally, the other patrons exchanged bewildered glances. What's wrong with those two? Why are they making such a fuss? They look like they haven't eaten in 3 days. If they were that hungry, they should be scarfing it down. Why are they putting on a show with every bite? Their performance didn't end there. When the innkeeper, a middle-aged woman, brought out 2 glasses of ale, their reactions reached new heights. Gasp! Young master, this is alcohol! Sob! I feel like I could faint just from the smell. This wasn't some legendary vintage. It was ale brewed from leftover village batches, the stuff that didn't make it to the Lord's table. Their reactions were nothing short of theatrical. Ah! Ah, I could risk my life for this drink. Technically, you already did, young master. The patrons concluded that the two were simply pathetically insane and decided to ignore them. But Karnak and Barros were unfazed. After decades of food deprivation, every bite felt like a divine gift. But wait, there was more. Here's your order, a waiter announced. At the neighboring table, a dish of stir-fried chicken with a tantalizing aroma arrived. Gasp! They have chicken here? This must be a high-class restaurant, young master. Even in a prosperous trading village, beef or pork was rare outside festivals. Chicken was more accessible, but still not an everyday treat. Karnak and Barros exchanged eager whispers. Barros, Al with that chicken would be amazing. But how much do you think it costs? This wasn't a meal for a few copper coins. Should we just slaughter them all and take it? Don't forget, we want to be decent people, young master. Barros quickly pointed out the folly of that plan. Do we even have the strength to kill everyone here? We'd be the ones who end up dead. Right. They were no longer the Monarch of Death or the strongest Death Knight Lord. With heavy hearts, Barros opened his money pouch to pay. Sigh. If only we had the money. Barros muttered when something unexpected caught his eye. Huh? Barros's eyes widened. What is it? Young master, something strange. What do you mean? Barros discreetly pulled out a silver coin. Why is that in there? Barros quickly stuffed it back and showed Karnak the inside of the pouch. There are more silver coins than copper coins. That's impossible. Karnak checked his own pouch. It was true. More than half the coins were silver. Wait, you're just noticing this now? You didn't check your pouch on the way here? Why would I? I thought I knew what was in there. As a servant, it should be your responsibility to check it. I was the second most powerful being in Necropia until this morning. You know, it's been 100 years since I was a servant. Had the pouch been switched? No, the family crest was still there. The contents, however, were different from what they remembered. They exchanged worried whispers. How much money did we pack when we left on our journey? Young master, how am I supposed to remember something from over 100 years ago? I distinctly remember we were so poor we had to pinch every copper. There was no way they'd had this much money back then. We were very frugal. This isn't on the level of being frugal. No amount of frugality turned copper coins into silver coins. How did this happen? Karnak felt a surge of fear. More money didn't just mean good fortune. Something was definitely wrong. What did I do wrong? Did we not go back in time? Or did the space-time magic not work properly in the first place? Barros interrupted his thoughts. Young master? What? Does this mean we can eat chicken now? The scales tipped in favor of indulgence. Screw it. Let's eat first and think later, Karnak declared. Hey, take our order. Karnak took a bite of the juicy chicken. Wow, he washed it down with ale. Aha! They feasted like starved animals, reveling in their newfound joy. Wah! They emptied their plates in a frenzy, each bite more ecstatic than the last. As the meal concluded, Burroughs mumbled contentedly, Wow, I think I'm in heaven. I know, right? Was meat always this delicious? I don't think even drugs could compare. Didn't we try drugs, though? I remember it feeling like nothing. That's because we were already dead when we attempted it. There was no record of undead getting high and giggling. Anyway, this is amazing. Karnak leaned back in his chair, savoring the pleasure. It was so intense he could die happy. This was worth sacrificing power and glory. But he couldn't stay there forever. All right, let's get a grip and think. Karnak straightened up and examined the money pouch. What in the world happened? Barros's expression turned serious. Do you think our memories are wrong? I can see mistaking 9 copper coins for 10, but mistaking 10 silver coins for 10 copper coins? That's ridiculous. Then did your magic go wrong, young master? How could space-time regression magic possibly go wrong in a way that turns copper coins into silver coins? Maybe the space-time continuum got warped, took our copper coins, and replaced them with silver coins? Karnak looked at him as if he were the biggest idiot in the world. How would that even make sense? Barros retorted, sounding even more idiotic. That's for you to figure out. What do you expect from an uneducated swordsman? He had a point. Karnak fell silent, unable to argue. Barros continued soothingly, Let's just head back to your family manor. We can figure things out once we get there. You're right. Karnak leaned back in his chair again. The thought of the journey was daunting. It would take 3 days to reach Zestrad Mansion on foot. It's going to be an exhausting journey. It'll take forever to get there on foot. At Karnak's grumbling, Barros suddenly had a thought. Wait a second. What now? Come to think of it, we don't have to walk back, do we? This is a relay station village. Why don't we just rent some horses? Relay stations rented horses to messengers and merchants in a hurry. Renting was common, and while the fees were steep, they had the money. What's the problem? We have all this money. Exasperated, Karnak chided him. You're not even a little bit concerned about where this money came from. Barros shook his head and countered. Will our worries magically disappear if we don't spend this money? Well, no. Then let's worry while we spend it. At least our bodies will be comfortable. Karnak blinked in realization as Barros continued. A comfortable body leads to a comfortable mind, and a comfortable mind solves problems more efficiently. At first, Karnak thought Barros was being ridiculous, but the logic began to make sense. You know, that's strangely persuasive. After their heavenly meal, Karnak and Barros headed to the relay station on the west side of Dara village. The Dara relay station was a large, 2-story wooden building with a stable. A middle-aged man greeted them with a bright smile, likely the manager. Welcome back, gentlemen. The two froze. Back? Us? Welcome back, implied they'd been here before. The man bowed. The horses you entrusted to us have been well taken care of. Entrusted horses? Karnak whispered to Barros. We did? Barros whispered back. Bewildered but maintaining composure, they followed the man to the stable. A dozen horses were tied up. 2 brown steeds began to snort and paw the ground upon seeing them. Nay! Nay! The man smiled and calmed the horses. Looks like they're happy to see their owners again. Karnak and Barros exchanged uneasy glances. The horses definitely seemed to recognize them. Karnak continued to whisper, but we've never met them before. They're so happy it's making me uncomfortable. The man handed them the reins. As you requested, I've been feeding them a mix of high-quality hay and beans. They're both full of energy. The man's overly friendly demeanor suggested he was expecting something. Barros caught Karnak's eye. This is that, right, sir? Karnak caught on. It is. Should I? Try it. Let's see how he reacts. With permission granted, Barros took out a silver coin and young master. Instead of being surprised, the man accepted the coin with a knowing nod and bowed deeply. Thank you, as always. I'll bring out the saddles you left with us right away. As the middle-aged man hurried off, Karnak muttered, As always? It seems we've done this before, Barros observed, and with silver coins, no less. We did? The situation was absurd. It felt like a scene out of a comedic skit. A clueless noble, overwhelmed by wealth he didn't remember acquiring. Young master, what in the world is going on? Even Barros was starting to get genuinely worried. I don't think this is something to be blindly happy about. Ugh, that's what I kept trying to tell you. Do you finally get it? Karnak fell deep into thought. Did they really go back in time? It seemed so. The world was largely the same as he remembered. But there were also significant discrepancies. I need to get home as soon as possible. That's the number one priority, Karnak thought. Meanwhile, Barros had another thought. What should I call these guys? Hey, what are your names? Nay. Right. I'm an idiot for trying to talk to horses. As they awaited the saddles, Karnak's mind raced. This unexpected wealth and the déjà vu were unsettling, but the immediate luxury of chicken and ale was a welcome distraction. All right, let's focus on the present, Karnak said, trying to put his worries aside. We've got horses to rent and a journey ahead. We'll deal with the rest when we're home. Barros nodded. Agreed. Let's make the most of what we have and get back to the manor. With that, the two men prepared to leave Darha village. They mounted their horses, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. The road ahead was long, but at least they had the comfort of their unexpected fortune and the anticipation of solving the mysteries awaiting them back home. As they rode off, Karnak glanced back at the village, wondering what other surprises the future might hold. Chapter 3. Something Strange. 3. House Zestrad was your average run-of-the-mill noble house in the Ustil Kingdom. Not quite old money, but not exactly new either. Think of it as the beige of noble houses, unremarkable, stable, and as exciting as watching paint dry. Karnak, our protagonist, sighed wistfully. A truly unremarkable family, he mused, the kind of longing that comes from looking at a mediocre slice of life and wondering if there's a better flavor out there. Their land? Neither a lush paradise nor a barren wasteland, just enough to keep them going. They celebrated good harvests and gritted their teeth through bad ones. Extravagance was a foreign concept, much like their ability to win a lottery. But they kept their dignity, or at least tried to, which was something. Karnak's grandfather, Baron Grelide Zestrad, was a dreamer. Unfortunately, his dreams were bigger than his business acumen. How long must we languish in this backwater? He'd bellow. Shouldn't a man strive for greatness? Well, greatness came at a cost. Grelide staked their territory on some dubious business ventures, lost it all, and left the family drowning in debt. It's the classic story of try to get rich quick and end up with nothing. Enter Baron Crawford Zestrad, Karnak's father, who inherited this charming mess, a barren land and a mansion that looked like it had seen better centuries. He worked hard to drag the family out of the pit, and it was a struggle, the kind where you need to add "send help" to your grocery list. Crawford's bright spots included his eldest son, whom he labeled promising, and his second son, a knight with more training than talent. Truthfully, Karnak snorted, promising and talented were just my father's delusions. While Crawford clung to noble habits like having a mistress, he did so with the finesse of a bull in a china shop. This led to endless drama, Karnak's mother suffering, his stepmother Isabella falling ill, and Karnak himself growing up as the black sheep of the family. Ah, the good old days of family dysfunction. Now, with a coin in his hand, Karnak pondered, so where did this money come from? The 3-day trek from Darha village to the Zestrad estate was cut down to 2 thanks to their trusty steeds. Not as much time saved as I hoped, Barros grumbled, glaring at his horse. Didn't the stableman say they were well fed? Why did they tire so quickly? Karnak, ever the optimist, retorted, these horses are pretty hardy for living creatures. Barros rolled his eyes. I've only ever ridden a zombie horse, a skeleton horse, and a ghost horse, none of which tire, eat, or poop. Convenience, you know, except for the whole slowly killing me with death energy thing. As they neared the estate, Barros spotted it and exclaimed, The estate is in sight, young master. Funny how the mind works, Karnak mused, staring at the fields of green barley. I don't have a single fond memory of this place, yet it's strangely nostalgic. Barros grumbled. All I feel is annoyance. I wasn't exactly welcomed here either. Being an orphan who'd been abandoned by his parents, Barros wasn't exactly the town's favorite. Young Karnak had taken pity on him, an act of charity that wasn't as noble as it sounded. I was the only one who looked after you, wasn't I? I was the only one who'd look after you too, Barros shot back. Why are you bragging about it now? As they approached the estate, the once crumbling Zestrad mansion came into view. The walls were pristine, the garden lush, and the whole place looked like it had just had a makeover from a high-end renovation show. Where are we? Where have we ended up? Barros wondered aloud. I don't know. Let's just go inside, Karnak replied. At the gate, a guard rushed over, beaming with joy. Ah, young Master Karnak. Yeah, I'm back, Karnak said, trying to act casual. The guard turned to the other with urgency. Inform the butler. The young master has returned. Of course, the other guard responded. Karnak could only sigh. The welcome was warmer than a sauna on a summer day. The guards were enthusiastic, the mansion was sparkling, and even the servants' clothes were immaculate. This was a far cry from the last time he'd seen the place. Doesn't this feel like a nightmare? Barros muttered. Me too. Let's hurry home, Karnak agreed. They entered the grand mansion, and Karnak's disbelief reached new heights. The butler, Taffel Flide, greeted them with an unfamiliar warmth. Welcome home, my lord. Karnak and Barros exchanged stunned glances. The young master is the lord? They thought in unison. In the opulent drawing room, teacups steamed on a table. Karnak's jaw dropped. Tea? He thought. He'd never even seen such luxury before. Barros looked equally bewildered. Taffel, speaking softly, mentioned, It's been over half a year since you ascended to the position of Baron, Lord Karnak. Have you achieved what you set out to do? Achieved? Karnak echoed, caught off guard. The steward seemed puzzled and repeated the question. That's what your journey was for, wasn't it? Karnak tried to play it cool. Ah, well, more or less. The steward nodded approvingly. That's good to hear. The late Baron will be pleased. Wait, my father is dead? Karnak thought. And Lady Isabella, she would have been so proud if she were still with us. Taffel continued. Isabella was Karnak's stepmother. She's dead too? Karnak thought. The steward added, When even Master Tessel passed away, I was worried sick, but now I can finally breathe easy. Even my oldest brother is dead? Karnak thought, the questions piling up. He glanced at Barros, signaling for him to intervene. Mr. Taffel, Barros said, Lord Karnak is exhausted from his long journey. Perhaps we can continue this conversation tomorrow? Taffel, catching the hint, quickly agreed. Oh, my, you're right. How thoughtless of me. As they exited, Karnak muttered, Let's get out of here quickly. Couldn't agree more, Barros replied, both eager to escape their bewildering new reality. And so, Karnak and Barros left, their minds racing with unanswered questions and a growing curiosity about the peculiar state of affairs in their once familiar home. Once they were safely out of the drawing room, Karnak and Barros made a beeline for their quarters, determined to put some distance between themselves and the increasingly surreal world around them. As they walked, Barros grumbled, This is all too much. First, we're greeted like returning heroes, and now the mansion's sparkling like it's had a facelift, courtesy of the gods themselves. What gives? I'm as confused as you are, Karnak replied, still trying to wrap his head around the luxurious transformation. One moment, we're dealing with an old decrepit mansion, and the next, it's a palace fit for a king. What's going on? Barros glanced around, looking more puzzled than ever. Well, at least we're getting some decent tea out of this mess. Can't remember the last time I had a proper cup. Karnak sighed. If only the tea were the only thing that was confusing. There's something off here, and it's not just the fine china. As they reached their rooms, they found them impeccably arranged, with fresh linens and luxurious furnishings that seemed to mock their previous life of modesty. Karnak flopped onto a plush armchair and rubbed his temples. We need answers. This place was barely holding it together before, and now it's like we've stepped into an alternate reality. Barros nodded in agreement. I'm with you, but where do we start? Karnak took a deep breath. We need to find out what happened while we were away, and more importantly, figure out why everyone seems to think I've achieved some great feat. Agreed. And maybe find out why everyone's treating us like we're royalty now, Barros added. Karnak and Barros spent the next few hours in uneasy silence, both lost in their thoughts. The estate's transformation was clearly the result of some significant change, but what had caused it was still a mystery. As night fell, Karnak found himself lying awake, staring at the ornate ceiling. His mind raced with questions. Why would I have left for so long? What was I trying to accomplish? And what has happened to my family? Sleep eluded him, and he decided that they needed to dig deeper into the mystery come morning. The next day, after a surprisingly restful sleep in their new, plush surroundings, Karnak and Barros set out to explore the estate. They began with the staff, hoping to gather some clues about the recent changes. Their first stop was the kitchen, where the head cook, a jovial woman named Mrs. Helga, was bustling about. Karnak approached her cautiously. "Mrs. Helga, could you tell us what's been going on around here lately?" Mrs. Helga wiped her hands on her apron and smiled warmly. "Oh, Master Karnak, it's such a pleasure to see you again. Things have been bustling ever since you took over." Karnak's eyebrows shot up. "Took over? Yes, indeed," Mrs. Helga said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You've been doing a marvelous job as Baron. The estate has never been in better shape." Karnak was taken aback. What exactly have I been doing?" Mrs. Helga looked puzzled. "You've been working hard on the estate's affairs, of course. Everyone's been so pleased with your leadership." "Right," Karnak said slowly. "But what about my family?" "Oh, they're gone, I'm afraid," Mrs. Helga said with a hint of sorrow. "You know how it is, managing a barony. It's a lot of work. They've all passed on." Karnak's heart sank. "All of them?" Yes, Mrs. Helga nodded sympathetically. "But you've done such a splendid job filling their shoes." Karnak and Barros exchanged glances, their confusion deepening. As they left the kitchen, Karnak felt a weight settle over him. His family had all passed away, and he was now the head of the estate. It was a sobering thought, and it made the cheerful surroundings feel a bit hollow. They continued their exploration, speaking with various staff members and piecing together bits of information. It became increasingly clear that Karnak had achieved a level of success and respect he hadn't anticipated. But the true nature of his accomplishments remained elusive. As they returned to their rooms, Karnak couldn't shake the feeling that there was still much more to uncover. His journey, whatever it had been, had clearly transformed his life and the estate in ways he was only beginning to understand. With a heavy sigh, Karnak looked out the window, contemplating the future. The answers were out there, and he was determined to find them. For now, though, he had to come to terms with his new reality and navigate the complexities of his unexpected position. And so, Karnak and Barros prepared to delve deeper into the mystery of their transformed world, ready to uncover the truth about what had happened in their absence and what lay ahead for them in their newly glamorous lives. Feel free to let me know if you need any more details or if there's anything else you'd like to add. All right, let's add a touch of adult humor to the mix while keeping the original content intact. Chapter 4. Something Strange. 4. Night had fallen, and Karnak, sprawled in his overly luxurious bed, was struggling to shake off a persistent feeling of unease. The kind of unease that you get when you realize you've just bought a house in the fanciest part of town but can't remember why. Ah! He gazed up at the bedroom ceiling, which looked like it had been wallpapered by someone who was definitely compensating for something. How much did that cost? And why is it on the ceiling of my room? It wasn't just the wallpaper that felt oddly excessive. The furniture, the bed, even the candles seemed like they were designed by someone with a serious flair for the dramatic. Sure, Karnak was no stranger to opulence. As the Monarch of Death, he'd been surrounded by more bling than a rapper at a jewelry store. But this was a far cry from the humble bedroom he remembered. It was like waking up in a mansion after spending your whole life in a shoebox. This wasn't part of the plan. Karnak had once craved the power of the Monarch of Death. But now, he just wanted a life that didn't make him feel like a prince trapped in a tacky fairy tale. He had a plan to enhance his power while erasing the side effects of necromancy. And, like any overprepared individual, he even had a backup plan. Because, obviously, one plan was for amateurs. No longer the hot-headed youth, Karnak had decided to play the long game, appeasing his family with enough cash to make even Scrooge McDuck jealous. He figured if he showered them with money, they might just forget they hated him. And how was he going to earn that money? By playing the stock market of the future, of course. He had meticulously gathered all sorts of historical records, dates and locations of future wars, droughts, famines, even where treasures would be discovered. Basically, he was preparing to win the lottery of history. A life in a house just like this, with a status just like this. Yet, despite achieving his goals before even breaking a sweat, Karnak felt a deep sense of emptiness. But I'm already living that life? He was about to coast on his success, but he wasn't exactly the type to take a nap just because he found himself in a mansion. I need to figure out what's going on, Karnak muttered, tossing and turning like a fish out of water. Why isn't Barrows here yet? Don't tell me he's asleep. Finally, a knock came at the door. It was like music to his ears. Young master, young master. Karnak's face brightened as if he'd just found a hidden stash of his favorite snack. Come in. The door opened, and Barrows slipped inside with the stealth of someone who had clearly been practicing their ninja moves. Karnak sat up and asked, "Is everyone asleep?" "Yes." "Finally, I can move around. You're going to mind probe the butler Jeezer, right?" "Of course, but with my current abilities, it's difficult to use it directly." He needed a catalyst and a drug to weaken the target's mental fortitude. Essentially, he was about to throw a mind party for one. So, there are a few things we need to prepare first. Delos petals, jas herb, perel extract, rapateau grass. Before Karnak could finish his shopping list, Barros reached into his pocket and pulled out a collection of weeds like he was pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Huh? You already prepared them? I've been with you for over 100 years, young master. You think I wouldn't have this much intuition? Barros shrugged. I'm late because I was gathering these. The garden is so well maintained that it was hard to find them. I see. They only used to be everywhere because the garden was neglected. If only he could say that about his love life. If I had to go back and search for them now, we would have wasted the entire night. Good job. Karnak gestured as he left his room. Let's go. What if the other servants spot us? We'll just say I couldn't sleep and went for a walk. Judging by the atmosphere, no one will question me for doing what I want. Well, you are the Lord now, aren't you? That's right, Karnak chuckled. Me? A lord? The illegitimate, good-for-nothing me? Delos petals, jas herb, perel extract, and rapateau grass were crushed and mixed in a bowl. Then, using necromancy, Karnak set the mixture ablaze. Whoosh! The flames flared up momentarily before dying down, leaving behind a plume of black smoke. The smoke moved like a living creature, swirling through the air, as if it were auditioning for a role in a horror movie. But it was, in fact, Karnak controlling it with his magic power. The black smoke seeped into the nostrils of the old butler lying on the bed. His body trembled for a moment, and then his eyes rolled back, revealing only the whites. It was like he'd just seen the plot twist of a really bad soap opera. Good, he's completely subdued. Satisfied, Karnak gave the command. Rise, my servant. The command in his voice resonated with power, and the old man immediately sat up in bed like a puppet on a string. Yes, master. The old butler was now in a state where he'd answer any question truthfully. Karnak decided to start with the most pressing question. How did my father die? The answer came immediately, as if it had been rehearsed. 3 years ago, he was slain by the blade of the treacherous Sir Randolph. Karnak and Barros exchanged glances, as if trying to remember where they'd last heard that name. Randolph? Barros, you know who that is? Wasn't he a knight from Deventer? You know, the neighboring territory. It was all a bit confusing without the proper context. And what about Baroness Isabella? Grief-stricken by the loss of the Baron and the first young master, she fell ill, and in the end she never recovered. Ah, so that's the order they died in, Karnak continued. Then what happened to my big brother, Tessel? The first young master. He bombarded the butler with question after question, each answer coming with the enthusiasm of a contestant on a game show. Karnak learned that until he turned 16, nothing much had changed. Same old family drama and a territory on the brink of collapse. But things started to get interesting 4 years ago, when Farrelt, his second oldest brother, stumbled upon a massive copper vein. A copper vein? Karnak frowned. I don't recall ever hearing about a copper mine in our territory. Barrows shrugged. It's possible we just didn't know about it before. It was discovered by chance, after all. Even so, it sounds too convenient, don't you think? Finding a mine was the fantasy of every rural noble, much like hitting the jackpot without actually buying a lottery ticket. And of course, if you announced a mine discovery, everyone would suspect you were involved in some shady business. But the copper vein was real. How Zestrad immediately began developing it with all the enthusiasm of a kid on a sugar rush. However, they didn't mine it themselves. They left that to the Tekos Trading Company, the biggest trading company in the Eustal Kingdom. The problem arose when the neighboring Deventer Viscountcy decided they wanted a piece of the action. Wow, how shameless. Well, they were always shameless, weren't they? Barros commented. But the thing is, Karnak shook his head. It's not a completely baseless claim. The copper mine was in a disputed area, and while Zestrad had claimed it, it was not clear-cut. It's definitely near our territory, but it's also true. How sincere is he? Just as Karnak was about to move on to the next question, something struck him like a bucket of cold water. Wait, I risked my life? Karnak's face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? Why would I risk my life? The old butler, still under the influence, gave a teary-eyed nod. You fought bravely, master. You stood firm against the invaders, defending your people with honor. Karnak felt like he'd just walked into a bad sitcom where the plot made no sense. Wait, so I'm a hero now? When did that happen? The old butler continued to babble, completely convinced of Karnak's heroic feats. Yes, you led the charge, held the line. Everyone knows of your bravery. Karnak's mind was racing. I'm starting to think my life might be a lot more complicated than I thought. Did I really become some kind of legendary figure just by being here? Barros, watching the spectacle, commented dryly. Looks like you've had a major glow-up, young master. From a good-for-nothing to the lord who risked his life. Quite the turnaround. Yeah, if only I remembered any of this, Karnak said with a chuckle. Next thing I know, I'll find out I'm secretly a dragon slayer or something. The butler, still under the mind probe, added with unwarranted enthusiasm, and don't forget the tale of how you single-handedly repelled an entire army with nothing but sheer will and a rusty sword. Karnak and Barros exchanged a look. It seems my past life had quite the flair for the dramatic. Karnak, now thoroughly intrigued and a little bewildered, decided to dig deeper into the so-called heroic chapter of his life. If his current self could stumble into a lavish mansion, who knew what else he might discover about his supposed heroism? With the butler's answers adding more layers to his already tangled past, Karnak knew one thing for sure. He had a lot of sorting out to do. And maybe a new strategy to handle his newly found, if confusing, reputation. Well, this is going to be one hell of a ride, Karnak mused. I'd better brace myself for the next plot twist in this bizarre saga. As he prepared to delve further into his mysterious legacy, he couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Sometimes, life's surprises came wrapped in the most unexpected packages.
If you enjoyed the ride, smash that like button harder than the main character smashes his enemies. And subscribe, because why not commit to something other than bad decisions for once?